right off the bat, when we came into office, we developed a poll worker recruitment brochure that we provide to the counties, and in that it has all the addresses, contact information of the boards of elections. But we've seen things as innovative as putting in requests in water bills for that an entire city sends out. Claremont County, they did a very nice public service announcement for television and bought about $2,000 worth of cable TV time, and they have more poll workers than what they even needed, so they have backups to serve. As you said, working with businesses, I've seen presentations made to chambers of commerce, the youth at the booth, where we're working with the high schools. That's been a hugely successful effort. Now, when I came into office, maybe from my judicial days, I said, well, why couldn't we recruit poll workers like we recruit jurors? Well, that created a little bit of a firestorm. And they said, well, you can't have compulsory voting. I said, they don't have to vote, they just have to be poll workers. So I tried on that one. But it seems that the boards are getting very, very resourceful and coming up with ways to get citizens from all walks of life and from all ages to participate, and I think that's improving everyone's experience. So Cuyahoga's close on the recruitment that it needs. I think it has everyone that it needs for the October 14th election, and it's really close on where it is November 4th, but I think Cuyahoga still needs a few more people.
Hi, I'm Lauren Reeves, and I'm a junior at Maple Heights High School. And something stuck out to me when you were speaking. You said something about the legislature and the Board of Elections not being able to get the communication. Sometimes there are things that are changed. I wanted to know, was there any measures that were taken to get a better communication between the legislature and the Board of Elections?
And thank you for asking me that question. It's really interesting. If I go back to my personal experience, I actually worked in the Secretary of State's office, my first job out of law school. And my job, by the time I left there, was to be the legislative counsel, where I handled legislation for the Secretary of State, but I also handled it on behalf of the boards of elections. And over the years, that changed, and the last Secretary of State said to the boards of elections, I'm not representing you in the legislature, you're on your own. So the boards of elections pay county money into an election officials association, which they always have, but they did so now and have hired their own lobbyist. And that makes it a little bit more interesting for someone like me, because when you have a lot of partisanship, and it shouldn't be involved in an election system, they have this bipartisan sort of tension so that each side's a check and a balance on the other. But what ends up happening is, by example, we knew that we need to see some changes that would make things easier for voters. Like, for instance, if a voter sends back in their absentee ballot and they left off their birth date, it's something that's required, and unless we have that, we can't count the ballot. So we wanted the Board of Elections to be able to send a postcard, or if they're in a smaller county, to call the voter and say, you know what, you needed one more thing for your ballot. Could you just come in and fill this out? We'll be able to count your ballot that way. Well, we couldn't even get enough agreement in the legislature to do this, because what ended up happening was, if you had a legislator who said, well, we don't really like that Secretary of State because she's on the apportionment board and she could redraw the district lines, and we would prefer to have someone from the other party there so we have control over the district lines, so let's not give her anything. So they could call a Republican election official and say, and it would be the same if I was a Republican Democrat, but they could call the other party election officials and say, do you have a problem with this? And they could probably find one who would, because there's a lot of election officials in the state, and then they'd say, nope, sorry, can't do it. And so it's been a little prickly, but it's something that we're constantly working on to try to improve, and I'm optimistic that that's going to get better. And no matter what, I'll never give up. I'll just keep on trying, because if I'm thinking first about the voters, then I'll get through those battles, I'll get through those fights, because my eye is on the prize, which is making the elections better for everybody. Thank you.
I'm Alex Popovicki. I'm a senior at Stone Monroe Falls High School, and I am considering a career in politics, so I have a more conceptual question. That answer is actually a good segue into my question. Now, on an individual level, speaking to a young person coming into politics, with your experience as a judge, as a Secretary of State, what would you say is the most important thing to remember, or how do you personally go about keeping a nonpartisan, fair mind?
Thank you for your question, Alex. What happened to me when I became a judge was I had looked at the number of people coming into my court who had drug, alcohol, mental health issues, and I looked at their situation and I said, but for the fact that they had, they would not be in this system, in the criminal justice system. They would not be going to jail with handcuffs around their wrists, were it not for the fact that they were involved with drugs or alcohol or mental illness, that this was something that an affliction and an illness that they were dealing with. So I said, I can't stand this, I got to do something. So I went to classes at the judicial conference, and I said, I want to start a specialized docket in Franklin County. Not all the judges thought that was a good idea, but I figured a way around it. And what I was able to do was to work with another judge in the municipal court and 4 other people from Twin Valley, which is the mental health hospital in Columbus, but supplies forensic mental health services for the state, as well as some people from a funding agency in Columbus. And the 6 of us met, and then we brought together a group of totaling 60 people who met on their lunch hours, and together we created a mental health court in the municipal court and a drug court in the common pleas court where I was. And what that demonstrated to me was what you can do if you're holding an office of public trust by bringing people in your community together and sort of sparking the imagination of people in that community and what they could do to improve and make life better in their community. And I said, that is public service, and that is what I love. And so it was very difficult for me to quit my job as a judge so that I could run for Secretary of State. But I said, because I love public service, because I know that I can take the election background that I have and some of the other things I've learned as a judge and do more for more people, I'll move in this direction. And fortunately, I have a family who supported me in doing that too, because that's important. But I would say it's public service, understanding what that's like, understanding that that's what should drive you when you hold political office. Hope that helps.
Dale Schilling, a teacher at Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy. Is early voting, which I like, here to stay?
Is early voting here to stay? Yes, I do think that it is. One of the proposals that I had made to the legislature was that we have early voting for 15 days at least 4 locations in a county, and instead of just the one. And I spoke with the Secretary of State of Florida, where they have that same scenario. I think they have more than 4 locations in a county. So they have 15 days of early voting, and then on election day, you just vote in your regular precinct if you haven't voted already. And I said, we'd really love to try it in Ohio in that way as a pilot project. And he said, if you do it as a pilot, you'll never stop because people love it. And so I think what the legislature has experienced with some angst this election season with the 5-day overlap and for the boards of elections, this 35 days of in-person voting, when you have the absentee voting for anyone who wants to do it with no reason at all, I think we're going to need to come together and say, maybe we should compact that early voting period, offer it in more locations, and because what people have really loved so far about this election is that they have choices. They have lots of different ways that they can exercise their right to vote, and I think you being an educator would understand that there's never just one way to reach a student, that students learn in a variety of ways, and I think people are able to express themselves through voting in a variety of ways. So I look for that to happen, and I hope that we'll be able to see the kind of cooperation, bipartisan cooperation we need to make this happen for people. Thank you.
Today at the City Club, we have been listening to the Honorable Jennifer Brunner, Ohio Secretary of State. Thank you, Secretary Brunner. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is adjourned.